What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswaves. Wouldn't you know it, after we talked about those images apparently that leaked out for Switch 2 Joy-Cons, now we have listings for different accessories for the system, and even a new report that apparently nails down when we can expect this thing to release. I put all this stuff into one segment. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about another game shutdown with the live service situation continuing to go downhill. This one coming from Ubisoft. And then we also have SEGA, who, go figure, is not too happy with the SuperSega project, so much so that they pretty much want to wipe it off the face of this earth. We'll go over all of that, though, here today. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button. It helps out a ton. And if new here to the SpawnWave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members to the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with Xbox Game Pass games for the month of December. Remember, we do have multiple Game Pass tiers. There's Core, Standard, there's PC, there's Ultimate. So I'm going to go through this list and try to point out as best as I can where all the games are going as well. They're making it a bit more complicated here, but either way, we'll head over to news.xbox.com, starting at the top here with today, December 4th, and that's Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. We already talked about that one. That's going into all three tiers, Ultimate, Standard, and then Core. Sticking with December 4th, we do have Forza Motorsport. That's going into Game Pass Standard. We have Haunty. That's also going to Game Pass Standard. Humanity. That's Game Pass Standard. Moving up to December 5th, we do have EA Sports WRC. That's Game Pass Ultimate and then PC Game Pass. Sticking with December 5th, we have Overthrown. That's a game preview on Ultimate and then PC. That's Cloud, PC, and Xbox Series X and S. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. That is December 9th. That's Ultimate and then PC Game Pass. Moving up to December 10th, we do have Wild Frost. That's Ultimate and then PC Game Pass on Cloud, Console, and PC. Then we have on January 2nd, so actually a pretty big gap there, Carry On. That's Cloud, Console, and PC. That's Ultimate, PC Game Pass, and then Game Pass Standard. And then Road 96, that's January 7th, Game Pass Ultimate, PC, and then Game Pass Standard. They also show that DayZ and then Goat Simulator will also be going into Core alongside of CTR. So not bad. As I mentioned, there's a pretty large gap there, and it does make me wonder if maybe there are some announcements slated for, say, the Game Awards or just Wave 2, quote-unquote, that might fill in that gap. So it's something to keep in mind. Obviously, the big game most people are looking towards right now, if you have Game Pass Ultimate, is Indiana Jones. And we'll find out a bit more how that does with reviewers and with early access here in a few days. Also, it turns out Pokémon TCG Pocket, the cell phone Pokémon card game, is doing really well. Go figure, right? We already heard about how many people have downloaded, tens of millions of people in a few days, but now we're starting to get some numbers when it comes to revenue, and we can see this is over on Games Industry. They say Pokemon trading card game has reportedly reached, get this, $208 million in revenue in its first month. That's according to App Magic estimates. And I have to say that's actually kind of impressive, because if you've played Pokemon TCG Pocket, it's actually pretty good about just giving you packs consistently. They already say it's like every day you can open 2, but then on top of that, you get things that sort of speed up that timer, these little hourglasses. And many times I'll find myself opening 1 or 2 extra packs in a day, so like 3 or 4 at a time. And for me, for what I do with it, which is check in here and there, open some packs, and occasionally do some of the battling, for a phone game that's pick up and play and spend a few minutes in there, I'm pretty happy with it. So it is a little surprising to me that it's made that much money, although I guess also not. Even though the game does hand out packs a lot, there are many people who want to complete the sets, and they don't mind spending a ton of money, which, keep in mind, a lot of these phone games do target just a few people, whales essentially, a few groups of people, in order to hold the whole thing up. But $208 million, it continues to show that the Pokemon franchise can basically print money whenever they want. Oh, and we did get another game going into Nintendo Switch Online that actually is following a current trend when it comes to Donkey Kong, as you can see over on Nintendo's official account. Join Dixie Kong and Kiddy Kong on an adventure to try to find the lost world. Donkey Kong Land 3, now available to play for Nintendo Switch Online members, this being in the Game Boy app. So if you just have the basic NSO, the $20 a year one, this is there, so you can check it out. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience with this. As I mentioned before, I played just most of the Super Nintendo ones, and I had experience with like one of the Game Boy Donkey Kong Lands. I'm more curious if, are they really going to move up now to Donkey Kong 64? Maybe to close out the year, or maybe to start say 2025, since we are of course getting Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Maybe that's a way to sort of close things out heading into 2025 or start things up. We'll see. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with some of the Switch 2 information that continues to trickle out online, which, I mean, a lot of people assume at this point, based on shipment logs and the fact that we're even seeing images of alleged Switch 2 Joy-Cons, that the thing is in mass production. So yeah, accessory makers probably already have an idea around dimensions and are indeed producing their own stuff to go alongside of the launch. But that means we're probably going to see more and more information get out there as we head to 2025, which is less than a month away now. So things should start accelerating here pretty quickly. And in fact, we have a couple of stories from yesterday that we can see here. This starts with VGC, where they say vendors on China-based e-commerce website Alibaba have started selling accessories that are allegedly compatible with Nintendo Switch 2. Wario64 did share some of the images here that were also posted on places like Fanboards and then relayed over on the Reddit gaming leaks and Nintendo Switch forum and stuff. But essentially, it comes down to a case for the system, which it's pretty standard. There's so many cases you can buy for the current Switch OLED, the Switch Lite, the regular one. Makes sense. You would probably have a ton of them to choose from at launch, or in this case, before the thing comes out. And then we also have screen protectors, another staple, I would say, for most people when it comes to devices like this, whether it's tablets, cell phones, or a handheld gaming PC, or in this case, a new Switch system. The big thing, though, is it does show a comparison shot to the current Switch. So not the OLED, to my understanding. This is just like the base red box Switch. So you can sort of measure up that 6.2-inch screen versus what does appear to be an 8-inch screen. You can also see that they are missing a notch there, which that would normally be for the light sensor. And it's pretty easy for Nintendo maybe to move that around, so it could be at the top or the bottom, somewhere away from the screen technically. That'll come down to just some of the internals and how they place different things. But really, to me, the biggest part is, look, they have the dimensions for some of this stuff, the accessory manufacturers and sellers, and yeah, you're going to start seeing it show up early on places like Alibaba, as like there's not as many regulations necessarily around them. So hey, why not get a head start and just start selling these things? I'm sure these listings have had a ton of views, especially like the casing, to see if you can get any little extra, which it's a big case. It is. And you can also see on the back, they have extra depth for the triggers and ZL and ZR. And I would say at this point, we know it's going to be quite a bit larger than the current Switch now, and it would probably take on more of a size closer to the Steam Deck. Not necessarily that large, but it's probably somewhere between the current Switch OLED and then that Steam Deck, so just keep that in mind. It's not exactly gonna be a small system. Now, on top of these accessories showing up online, there was also a report out of Game Reactor, which is a bit more of a credible source here overall. And well, we can see this over on their website. This is translated, where they say, according to former Game Reactor editor Juan A. Fonseca, as per gathered from various sources on Nintendo, the supposed Nintendo Switch 2 will arrive around June 2025, they say maybe July, for a price between 400 and 500 euros. These claims from various developers are in line with other recent leaks and the assumption that Nintendo is simply unable to produce enough machines to meet demand for a hypothetical launch in the early part of the year. Nintendo has declined to comment on this new information. So not shocking at all. Nintendo, I don't think, was ready to reveal the information around the Switch 2's launch to Game Reactor on just an email that they sent out for comment. But to my understanding, the pricing thing here, as some people started to really look into the backstory around that and where that information was coming from, is more or less just not necessarily guesses, but like educated finds or analysts trying to come up with, okay, parts cost and what exactly they'd be shooting for in terms of feature set and just the overall raw power of the device. 400 to 500 euros. I mean, most of us assume it's going to be about $400, maybe $450. So this just seems like a safe bet essentially on their side with that part. However, the information around this thing launching in June seems to be more so from their own sources. And I think most people now, based on where we are in December, assume it's going to come out in the next fiscal year. I don't believe it's going to come out around Christmas or the holiday 2025. So in that sense, I'm thinking like probably an April or May release. June might be pushing it a bit because you start to get closer to that summer period, which starts at the end of June. And you have a lot of people in PR and other parts of the companies that are on vacation and stuff. So I feel like you want to get that thing launched and out there when there's going to be a ton of media and things to cover. probably ahead of that. So that's kind of why I'm thinking April or May is a good spot for them. They get plenty of time to introduce it maybe in January or February, and then have a nice couple of months run up for marketing and their big push. So it seems like we are getting pretty close here as we enter 2025. I think we're going to hear quite a bit, even ahead of Nintendo's own presentation or announcement that they themselves say will happen before the end of March 2025. So we'll keep our eyes open for that one. Next up, let's talk about another live service shutdown, which has been pretty much a constant. Like, we see some of these live service games get shut down before they even release, like Hyenas from SEGA, and some, well, as Concord, they don't last more than a couple of weeks. Well, in this case, XDefiant is shutting down and basically got a year out of it. Remember, this thing officially launched out of closed beta and all the stuff they were doing behind the scenes to get balancing right. They launched it right at the end of May 2024, and yesterday they announced that it is indeed shutting down. Now, at first I saw this with a story that was run by Insider Gaming, and is basically, yes, as you can see here, they say, several sources have revealed that Ubisoft will be shutting down XDefiant in June 2025. So again, that's roughly a year of it being launched and then closing down. The news was mentioned in an internal all-hands meeting today. The decision was made due to poor player numbers and a lack of player spending, according to sources familiar with the decision to sunset the game. Now, from there, news started to roll in. This from Steven Totillo, who says Ubisoft San Francisco and Ubisoft Osaka both closed. Sydney team ramping down. Up to 177 people had to be laid off. Now, he then came back corrected, said it's closer to 277 people. Half of XDefiant team moving to other projects, and Ubisoft had hoped game would compete with, get this, Call of Duty, but recently was denying shutdown rumors amid declining player numbers. And you're basically going to push back on that even months before this eventual decision was made, because as soon as you say that, yes, we're shutting it down at some point in the future, your player numbers are going to drop like a rock. Why would people invest any time or money? And if you are indeed trying to at least make some final push there right at the end in the final month or two, just to see if there's any hope for the thing, I mean, you're not going to say it. You're going to be basically completely tight-lipped up until it's time to start thinking about that shutdown, like apparently they did here with an all-hands meeting. Now we can see over on their official account, they did make the announcement where they say, "Dear players, important message, XDefiant is sunsetting. Thank you for your incredible support and dedication to XDefiant. We regret to inform you that we are initiating the sunset process starting today, December 3rd. As a result, new downloads, player registrations, and purchases will no longer be available. Season 3 will still launch, the servers will remain active, and the game will be fully playable until June 3rd, 2025. They go on to say that if you have made purchases like the Ultimate Founders Pack, you will receive a full refund, or just any players who have made any purchases within the last 30 days will also be fully refunded." So, yeah, look, the thing with these live service games in general, Ubisoft clearly wants to have several live service games. They even want their single player games to kind of be like live service titles that are a bit more enclosed, where the way that they can sell you things like experience boosters and cosmetics, but not necessarily have this big, massive multiplayer experience. Whether it's XDefiant, where it's trying to be like a Call of Duty, so you have several rooms and it's like 6-on-6 or whatever, or you try to build things out even further, as they've been successful with like Rainbow Six, all right? But I think when you get to a position where you have so many of these live service games on the market, there's just only so much time they can go around. Like, the average person who's playing games isn't playing 10 hours a day, like, all day, like all week, right? There's so many points that they can play for a couple of hours, and they get together with their friends to play an online game that they've probably all settled on for quite some time now, and there's only so many hours that can go around. So that means that there are only so many live services, I think, that this market can hold up, and it's just taking these publishers a little longer, I think, than it should for them to figure that out. And unfortunately, in this case, XDefiant is the latest casualty of a market that I think is struggling to hold up all these live service games. I think a lot of these companies just need to get back to making good single player and more enclosed multiplayer experiences. Or ones that don't necessarily have to live forever or indefinitely and try to make all the money in the world. Next up, let's talk about SuperSega and how Sega is not happy that their name is being used for this system. Go figure. In fact, I think that's one of the things we mentioned right away, because SuperSega was asked, "Hey, you think it's okay that you're using Sega's name?" And they said, "Well, I think so." Turns out Yeah, they're not very happy. We can see this posted up by Time Extension. They say Sega has made contact with the team behind the SuperSega FPGA console to request its cancellation. They can reveal. Sega has approached Alejandro Martin, the lead behind the project, asking for the SuperSega name to no longer be used, all prototypes and units to be destroyed, the closure of the SuperSega website, and details on units sold and money generated by the project so far. Yeah, again, go figure. The Sega name being used isn't something that Sega wanted, especially for a system that is being marketed to play all these older Sega systems. And there's still a lot of questions around how feasible that really is. So if you tie Sega's name and branding to it and it doesn't deliver, there are probably a lot of people who are going to look at Sega sideways and be like, why didn't you guys deliver this? And they go, well, we weren't making that. What are you talking about? Well, it turns out SuperSega has their own terms for Sega. We can see this over on Time Extension once again, saying Martin has told Time Extension that the name change will be considered, but production will not be stopped unless Sega is prepared to cover cost, expenses, and what consumers paid. Martin tells us that if Sega does not agree to these terms, we think we will continue. I'm not really sure what they think is going to happen here. Like, they'll just bring the court system in. I don't really get it. They think they're gonna like fire back at Sega and they're like, no, we're gonna use your name unless you want to cover this, and this, and cover the cost for this. And like, they realize Sega, that brand is theirs, and they're then trying to make the rules. That whole thing, it seems very weird. Because at this point, it tells me if they're gonna continue, as they're alluding to here, that Sega will just get the court systems involved and take them out that way. I mean, you're going to get legal documentation in the mail very, very quickly, especially after making it public here that they are going to push back and just continue down this path. We'll see how it turns out. Interesting strategy, sure, but something tells me we're going to get another report, this time though with Sega not being so nice. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a budget-friendly, or at least a more budget-oriented PC gaming handheld, this one breaking off of the Legion Go that is from Lenovo, and it's a more expensive handheld, one that has some pretty cool features like the side controllers that break off basically like Joy-Cons, but we can see this is over on Windows Central, as they have some renderings of the more cut-down version. This, however, will be using AMD's Z2 platform, and I'm curious how this is going to work out for AMD because the Z1 Extreme is a very impressive mobile chipset that did have some weaknesses when it comes to power draw and, well, the battery life itself, sure, then memory bandwidth, some other things, but for the most part, I think it was a pretty good first outing for them with the Z platform. Well, this would be using the Z2G, and there's belief that they could get this thing down under $400. If they come in at like $350, I'll be very, very impressed. It is cut down, as you can see, where it does not have the Joy-Con-like controllers that come off. I'm sure the screen might be a little bit degraded there in terms of its resolution. You can see the size as well being a bit smaller, but I think that is an interesting area to tackle, sort of the cheaper alternatives for these PC gaming handhelds, because they've gotten very expensive, sure, and they're also very large. I wouldn't mind having one that is cut down, it's smaller, and it's cheaper, and sure, maybe you get like a 600-piece screen or something, but it can still deliver some of these medium to large Steam PC games, and it's not this massive, bulky system that you have to be really careful carrying around, and it more or less just stays at home all the time. I like the idea of one being smaller, thinner, comparable battery life, but being a bit more pocketable, although none of them really are. But something that travels a bit better and is cheaper. So I'm going to keep an eye on this one because I'm hoping it's a sector that more and more of these companies like Asus and even Valve maybe at some point attempts to tackle. So we'll see what Lenovo is able to do here, even with that Z2 chip that I'm expecting AMD to reveal as we get into the first quarter of 2025. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, have you tried out Pokémon TCG Pocket? 61% say no. Hey, 39% say yes. Look, it's a free mobile game. You can just download on your cell phone. It's pretty good about you just being able to be free to play and having fun with it. It does kind of bring back some of that nostalgia, if you remember way back in the day, opening booster packs, if you have not done that in a long time, without having to have, boxes and shelves of cards laying around. Very quickly, you'll end up like 500 or 600 cards even in this game. And if you actually put that into perspective with like having a case of these things, then having, I mean, eventually you get thousands of cards as you go down the road, you know, years and years of this app existing. So this is the case where I go, okay, the digital side makes a bit more sense because storage around these things can get out of control, but it is a lot of fun, and I do recommend people downloading it, trying it out. Just be careful about throwing a bunch of money into it because I can see how that's a steep hill you can fall down pretty quick. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Philip, who says, I only have 2 things about the PlayStation themes. These should be permanent, and whatever theme you pick should have their own boot up screen. Yeah, I think the boot up screen is awesome. That PS1 startup, classic, right? It would be awesome if the PS3 and the PS2, and sure, I guess even the PS4, but if those had boot up screens as well, and if we do get custom themes in the future that are more permanent, how awesome would it be if part of that is just the startup screen? What if you could mix and match these things? Could you have like a PS2 startup with a PS3 cross media bar? Like there are a lot of really fun things they could do here with that, and I'm hoping this is sort of a prelude to it, although we are 4 years into the generation, so you would have liked them to start it a year or 2 ago, so then you can get more and more themes as the generation goes along with some of these big console releases we assume Sony and third parties will be having soon. But I think there's a lot of potential here. Here's hoping Sony has some plans around it outside of just temporary things for the 30th anniversary. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to take a trip back to 2003 E3 with Halo 2, because it turns out that infamous demo is actually playable now, and I got a chance to check it out. Leave that right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.